Welcome. Happy Friday. It is time for 3 questions to Better Business. I'm Michael Davis of Speaking CPR and looking forward to today's interview with an outstanding woman who, although we've never met face to face, we live 5 minutes away, which is just incredible in this COVID age. But she is the drop-in CEO. Welcome, Deb Coviello.
Mike, thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to know you. And now we have an opportunity to bring some great conversation to your audience. So again, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. And as you listen to this interview, just notice Deb has one of the greatest speaking voices I've ever heard. She always relaxes me when I listen to her podcast, even though I'm getting great information. So, Deb, tell us 60, 90 seconds what it is you do as far as CEOs in business.
So I am ever evolving my message, but one of the things that I have a unique ability is dropping into organizations and situations and partnering with CEOs. They will often call me in at a point of transformation, crisis, chaos. Maybe they're in control, but they see the writing on the wall that something is changing and they have the courage to invite somebody else into the organization to partner with them, lay out the groundwork, and be able to bring them through the transformation. But one of the skills that I have, and this is from my engineering background, is the ability to take in a lot of data and information. Active listening is part of communication and being able to see a greater opportunity. And for the right CEOs, they agree, let's focus on that. We'll fix the business issue and really get them farther along than they thought. But I really do well is I also elevate the people's capacity and capability, because I can help with any transformation. But when you pull me out as the drop-in CEO, if the people haven't benefited from the experience, they're not going to be able to sustain the gains you realize. So that's the drop-in CEO brand.
I love that. And since we have different worlds we work in, but there's one key word, and that's transformation. When I talk to people about storytelling, I say your story, in order to be effective, has to be about some kind of transformation.
One of the things I'm just going to play off of that is that the art of communicating. That's all part of leadership. It's not just the information we disseminate, but how we connect with people, in your case, transformation. One of the things I have realized by learning from people such as yourself as an expert speaker is I am a STEM professional with a lot of things to say, and I can talk really fast because I am from New Jersey. As a Jersey girl, we talk fast. And you know what? People sometimes can't keep up with the information we're saying. And so if people cannot consume the important things that you're saying, you've missed an opportunity. So I have learned to slow down, leverage my superpower, my voice, because I ultimately want to connect with humanity and make a difference and transform them.
Well, that's the key. And in fact, I took one of the many polls I see on LinkedIn. I took one today, and it asked about what is the biggest problem that business owners need to solve in 2022, which will lead into one of our questions. But my answer was communication, because poor communication is the root of all problems, personal and business.
And when we don't teach our leaders, it's not just the words coming out of your mouth. There are many different dynamics in communication depending on the situation in front of us. But if we don't develop these essential skills, regardless of where you are in your career, it leads to lack of confidence, perceptions about who the other person is. They're difficult. They don't understand me. And we haven't developed the art of not just disseminating information, but messaging. That's what we're meant to do. And we miss that in business.
Yeah, we do. And you mentioned that one of the key superpowers is listening, which I've seen over the last 30 years, that skill's gotten worse and worse. And I think a big part of it, because the technological advances we've made have really hurt our listening skill.
I agree. And when we think about the different ways of communicating, texting, one dimensional, if you happen to get on a phone with somebody that's only two dimensional, getting live, and this is as close as we can get, you get so much more information. And when we say listening, it's reading between the lines if you have to consume a text, deep listening, not being distracted if it's on the phone. And then when we're seeing each other face to face, looking at the information, the data, the environment, the surroundings, all of that is part of listening. And so that is the greater skill we have to develop, is to bring in all that extra information of what maybe is not communicated into then what we communicate going forward.
Now, those are great points, and I could sum all that up with one observation I've made, Deb, and that is listening is hard work.
Yes, when we as professionals and we are experts, we are compensated and celebrated for having the answers and coming forth and being first to the finish line of giving our information. And yes, that does serve us. We need to continue to leverage that. But I have observed leaders that in a room, 10 professionals, people are rapid firing their information and the leader is quiet. Now, the beauty of it is he or she does not know the answer, but through the collective wisdom of listening to the input and processing and taking the time to listen and gain clarity when people can't see it, that when they do speak, they come forth with wisdom. It's like, oh yeah, that is the problem. Or they may say, I propose. They look wise. Leaders project themselves better. People will follow. So it's a little trick. Discipline, listen more, speak less. It'll strengthen your leadership and people will want to be with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, all this leads us into our first official question. It's,
Woo-hoo.
the title of this live stream is 3 questions, but it usually ends up being 33 questions. And we bury 3 really good ones in there and some really terrific supporting answers. So let's go to that first one, which is, this is not a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you see as we sit here on the precipice of the next year? What's the biggest challenge you see going into 2022?
I don't like to use the word the great resignation, but I think one of the things I want to say about that is that the people have spoken. They have said that they seek to be in control of their work environment. And that's okay. People are taking accountability because they want better options for work-life balance. But one of the things that the undertow of all of this is that leaders need to look at their organizational structure. If you are fortunate enough to have a key person in each individual role, maybe you need that when you're coming up and growing your business. But I challenge you to look at each of the roles and the work content. Is that role a full-time position? Or maybe you just need somebody for their subject matter expertise for a month, 3, 6 months of a time. Save that money and keep it focused on your core competency for which you're celebrated for, and have the courage to maybe think about then that extra maybe 20, 30% of your workforce is flexible resources, people that like to come in for a while, provide the highest value they can, and then leave. And that's how you grow your expertise and capability and shrink it when maybe you don't need it versus paying a salary full time when maybe they take 40 hours of work and stretch, or 20 hours of work and stretch it out over 40. It's a new business model leaders have to have the courage to think about in order to maximize their core resources and the ones that they need as the business changes. And it always changes. That's one of the things I think leaders should be thinking more about. Bring in experts like you, me, when you need them.
I love that. This is an overused word, but I'm going to throw it out here. The paradigm, the way we view the business structure has totally been upended by COVID. Mm-hmm. Although I've felt for over a year now, there's this common belief that's going around that COVID changed everything. I don't think COVID changed anything. It just put an accelerant under everything that was happening.
And the wise person, if they realize that it was simmering in the background and so it came forth. What is the next thing that people are feeling, are not saying, that given the next crisis, the next opportunity, the great gold rush, who knows what that might be? And how do leaders be able to predict the future or start poking around and say, what do I need to change now so that I'm not caught in a crisis? That's what a wise leader should be doing, looking deep now.
Yeah, I was fortunate 4 years ago. One of my mentors basically told me, didn't ask, he told me I had to start hosting his weekly global webinar series, his coaching. I said, I don't know what this Zoom thing is. I was really reluctant, not because I didn't want to do it. I was afraid I was going to hurt his brand. Being a good mentor, he kept pushing me into the deep end of the pool. And when COVID hit, I had 300 experiences online somehow. Well, before that, I had been talking to people at networking events. One of the ones that you and I have in common is H7. And I would talk to people and say, you should really consider virtual meetings. This is a very efficient way to meet. I'm sure you can guess what they said, Deb. Well, I could never do that. I have to meet people face to face. And I always had the same response. Look, it's coming. 10 years, 20 years, I don't know, but it is on its way. You better get used to it. Who knew what was going to happen in early 2020, obviously, but that's an example of people not seeing, even being introduced to change, but not ready for it until it hits a crisis situation. And I like what you said. Good leaders look ahead and say, here's what's coming.
Yeah, it's all about risk-based thinking. I mean, it's about planning. It's not like being heads down. Let's get through the budget. Let's get that market share, get that manufacturing expense. And that's what they're celebrated for. They should be laying out strategies for, okay, what are the things we see changing? How are the regulations changing? They need to put in place risk-based thinking that brings out creative thought. It brings out also what people are made of. I mean, you should be investing in money in things and preventing things from failing and breaking. It's a good piece of business because if not, you're going to pay twice and three times as more when there's a crisis and you have to react. And you don't want to be one of those companies.
Yeah, I was just reading about Jeff Bezos yesterday and his new position. He's obviously out of the day-to-day of Amazon.
Right.
However, his new role, and I'm paraphrasing, is he is planning to stretch out the death of his company as long as possible. And I'd heard this about him. He said, every company, the moment you started, is beginning to die. You just have to do everything you can to stay ahead of the market and trends to make sure you postpone that death.
It takes a lot of courage to say such bold statements. I mean, even my work, I see an underserved community of aspiring C-suite leaders that don't have a support system. If you're one of the lucky ones who's been a high performer and you're seen, heard, and respected, you get all the executive coaching, speaking, whatever, to make sure you're ready. But when leaders don't spend the time of looking at all those aspiring C-suite leaders, those are the ones that you say, oh, you're job hopping, and you're just moving around. But these are people that have lost their confidence. They don't have that mentorship and coaching to bring them up. So I am very, very focused. My passion work is providing the essential skills, communication skills for those aspiring C-suite leaders, because they are the CEOs tomorrow, and I want to be with them every step of the way. So that's forward thinking and having the courage to say such bold statements.
Yeah, and I love that, Deb, because what you're really doing is you're harnessing, and I love the word risk, because so many people think risk is keep doing what we're doing. To me, in this modern world, that is the biggest risk there is. Keep doing it because it got us here. And it's like, it takes real courage from visionary leaders to say, we're changing, folks. We're going to always be changing.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. The universe is lining up. I just wrote this week, like, always question the status quo, don't stay with the flow, because, you get greater understanding. If you don't, you assume narratives, you accept what things are, and it becomes how you operate. But we as leaders have to listen more. We have to ask questions. Why is the sky blue? Why? Again, technically, that's how I'm rewarded, because I want to get to the root cause. But people need to ask better questions, because then they're going to start opening up their minds to, well, why can't I be a high performer? What's holding me back? Nothing. Just asking the right questions, taking those risks, and putting yourself out there.
Well, I'll bring that really good response over into my world for a moment. The biggest obstacle that every one of us has is that limiting story that we tell ourselves.
Oh, yes. You want to go there?
Well, it might lead into our next question, actually, which is a little more specific. But let's go to the next question, and that is, where do I start with regard to bringing my product or a new product or service to the world? Because so often we have these negative stories or bad experiences that create a limiting belief. Where do we start in this new world?
Well, I mean, it's simple. It's starting with communicating, taking a risk, asking questions, interviewing. I mean, it is basic market analysis, but you can also test new concepts with friends. Like, well, what would it be if we had this? What do you think? And you get people that say, oh, that's not going to work. That's crazy. But you know what? I think we as leaders have to get data. and solicit it. And I will also say, don't necessarily listen to the majority. Because I'll tell you a quick story. When I gave a global presentation, I presented different information. Everybody followed the status quo and says, these are the 10 projects I'm going to do next year in order to achieve X. And I did something completely different. I said, here is what I have reflected about my leadership over the last year. I know what the kind of leader I now want to be, and here's how I'm going to lead differently to get a different result. And I'll give you a glimpse of what we're going to do next year. And when I tested the waters and spoke with people afterwards, the majority of the people, even my boss, did not like the way I did the presentation. But then when I sat with people that says, we need more leaders like you. We need people to think differently, et cetera. And so what I would warn people or caution people, if you want to test new products or services, yes, get the data. But think about the demographic of the data you're getting. If most people say, no, it's not going to fly, but listen to the ones that say, I like that idea, because they may be the consumers, the decision makers of tomorrow.
I really like that. And it also makes me think we need to prepare, because we see a vision, we have a vision, we look into the future, we get excited. We have to be prepared for those naysayers, and how do we overcome them, or at least do our best to make them neutral?
What I would say about naysayers is there's valuable data in that, because what we need to do is seek to understand why they don't believe it's a good idea or service, because in their truth, you'll learn something. And then obviously then you get some more information to say, oh, I wasn't clear in my messaging on how this was going to serve. That's great information. What if I told you it was going to do that thing? Oh, okay, well then it's a good idea. And you brought them over to the other side. So again, it's naysayers. They still bring valuable information to the table.
They do. It also makes me think, and I know that sometimes cliches, they're cliches for a reason. We overuse them, but in some cases and with some people, there's a reason we go back to them. And I keep thinking of Steve Jobs. He's been gone 10 years, but he was the ultimate in looking at, he would listen to people's negative feedback or naysayers, but he also knew what his gut was telling him. I mean, 2006, not one of us needed a device that made phone calls, searched the web, and gave us our music all at the same time. It was a ridiculous notion, but he saw something we couldn't. And now we can't get rid of him.
He's integrated into everything we do and how we speak and all those other things. Yeah, it's about just having that vision. If I'll tell you, as a STEM professional engineer, I wouldn't trust my gut. It's not logical. I can't intellectualize that thing. I'm going to ignore my gut. And then what that does is it creates lack of confidence, stress in your life, because there's a disagreement between the two. And while it may sound a little woo-woo, I'm starting to trust my gut a little bit more based on data, interfacing with people, and realizing things I want to do, how I want to serve, what's showing up on podcasts. Who would have thought years ago? But I just said there is something so powerful in being able to connect with people and communicating people and having an impact. So trust your gut on what feels right and go with it, because I think it's what you should be doing.
Well, you've mentioned confidence more
Yeah.
than once, which is a critical aspect for good
Yeah.
leadership. And it's also having the confidence to know that if you pull the trigger on an idea and you go down that road and it doesn't work, it takes a lot of confidence to say, you know what, this isn't working the way we thought. We got to get off this road and get on another one.
I think it's just data. I mean, I made a decision this year that I was going to double down. I was only going to be serving the CEOs of companies. I brought them on my podcast. I was courting them. And you know what? And again, forget about COVID. Didn't necessarily get the traction I wanted in this year.
Mm-hmm.
However, a slight course correction. I am going to redirect, still serve the CEOs. The aspiring CEOs are the ones that have been showing up in my universe saying, Deb, I want to talk to you. So a minor course correction. It's not a mistake. Learn from that. But I need to serve both communities. But I will tell you, those CEOs of 2021 are starting to get in touch with me. So
well, that's outstanding. And what you demonstrated was not letting your ego be so big and in the way that you couldn't look and say, all right, this was my idea, not going quite the way I expected. Course correction.
That's all it is. Not failures, not success. I mean, I'm a positive person to begin with, but it's just information. And we have the power to control what we do with that information.
Exactly. It's why, the great athletes, when they miss the shot, they miss the kick, whatever, they keep going back out there because it's that. Okay, I know what doesn't work in those conditions. I'll make an adjustment. I'll succeed on the next play.
And if we want, we can go into curling and where those theories go, but that'll be another interview.
I'll wait till we go to Canada for that one.
Great curlers up there.
Yes, I know. They love that sport.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Third question.
Yeah.
Well, actually more like our 33rd question, but that's okay. All right. We've talked about getting started. Now, what happens when a company leader feels like, all right, we've hit sustainability. We're in pretty good shape. What are some strategies to make sure they don't slip back into chaos?
Yeah, great question. I'm a people-centric leader. I mean, yes, we should stay up on our technology, make sure our cybersecurity is in place. Those are all easy things we should do to be part of our roadmap. But humans still run the world, even though we have AI and all of that stuff. We can't forget that we need to make sure we ask the question, what do they need to be successful? We need to be able to say, what does it look like for succession planning? If this person, I don't know, decided to resign, another pandemic, they got ill. We need to absolutely have succession planning in place. If you're a small business and you don't have people there vertically, then how can you cross-train people across the organization? And so you may have subject matter experts, but you might have to be a little bit courageous and say, well, what would it look like to cross-train these people? Is there an operator within your operations or a specialist? Let's start having them learn the next level. I talk about this in the CEO's Compass. We need to have mentorship programs. We need to have frequent conversations with our people about how to develop their skills, whether it's in communicating and connecting with people. You sometimes forget about people because their heads down. They do a good job. They are loyal, but you never know. We might be losing their creativity. Maybe they can't get ahead because we've never taken the time to help them how to interface. Communicate is a big thing. And that's what leaders should be doing now, is making more investments in the people. It's actually an inexpensive investment versus having to replace them.
Well, it's the old analogy of you can tune up the car, change the oil on a regular basis. You can check tire pressure and just do the minor maintenance along the way, or you can pay for the huge overhaul later. We all know that that's the more expensive route.
I've never told this to anybody, but check oil. Check oil. Honey, I need a new car. I didn't do the maintenance on my car. Didn't tell my husband about the check oil. Wound up with a new car. I will never do that again. So it can be quite expensive, to your point. So I have that experience. But, it sounds easy about the people. But I think when things are going well, this is the time okay, you can breathe easy. But the people become the next risk in your organization, because once you have the infrastructure, make the investment in them. I talk about it in the CEO's Compass. You have a mentorship program. Teach people how to exchange feedback. We can go into a lot of detail there, how to handle difficult situations. What's the gap? If people don't understand me, they can't communicate. I have all of those examples, and they're giving people just simple tools they can start practicing today, so you don't waste time, money, because even if you are stable, if the environment changes, you're going to get unstable for a little while. And unless you develop those skills in the people to handle interactions with other people, it's going to be wasteful, and it's going to take you longer to get out of that crisis or that transformation. So it's an investment, just like you invest in the air conditioning, infrastructure, etc.
Wait, you mean there are going to be more crises down the road, Deb? I thought COVID was the last one we deal with.
Oh, you foolish boy, you. I mean, it's supply chain. It's a military thing. It's, there's a tornado. There's always going to be a crisis. When we start accepting the fact, let's anticipate there is always going to be a crisis. What armor do we need to protect ourselves? Now, again, this is what I do with clients. I mean, we talk about and do risk and opportunity in your business. What do we need to do now? It's not just putting the procedures and training people, having the right equipment. Leaders, at least on an annual basis, need to say, what could happen? Even aliens. And if aliens is the worst thing that could happen, you need to start planning for everything else short of aliens coming in.
Yeah. How can they use your product or service?
That's an opportunity. You never know. A new market.
What I heard you saying there through all that really great insight is that proactivity needs to become a permanent part of a culture?
Yes. Music to my ears.
That's it.
And again, what the work that you do, communication, messaging, really that's how the world runs, is how we interact with each other. Machines can run businesses, equipment, operations, but we ultimately need to know how to communicate and influence and move people.
Oh, absolutely. And Deb, as we wrap up here, I have to share with you, you've given me a new example of how someone can share a story in 10 seconds. And I'm going to credit you the next time when I share this. But the check oil light, honey, I need a new car. That is a story. It sells an idea right there.
Thank
And
you.
I hope you're using that in networking as a metaphor for what you help companies do.
You know, Mike, you bring out the best in me. I've never told that story before, but I have learned from watching your work as well. Something so simple, a few words deliberately delivered very concisely, can have an impact. It's not the amount of information, it's how it's delivered.
So I'm glad all these are recorded, because there's brilliance that comes out of your mouth. We capture it and you can go back and check it. But that's a pretty easy story to remember. And I just love that. So I will use that as an example in the future, especially when I talk to people about networking. What do you mean you can't tell a story in 10 seconds? I've got one for you.
Thank you.
Courtesy of the Drop-In CEO. All right. Speaking of which, you've mentioned your book, and there are several ways people can get a hold of you. I'm going to put that up right now, and I'll put this under the video too when we post the recording. But Deborah at CovielloCM.com and the dropinceo.com. Tell us real quickly about your book.
So, the CEO's Compass, your guide, got to get it in the picture here. CEO's Compass, your guide to get back on track. It was the playbook I did not have when navigating tough challenges in business. No leadership, no mentorship or coaching. So, I have distilled my thoughts into a book that first starts as personal development. Who are you as a leader? What type of leader do you need to be? Put the book down after chapter 1. Yes, put the book down after chapter 1 before moving on. And then you may remember as a child how pick your story, pick your adventure, look at your current situation, and based on your gut and what you are seeing off track in the business, you can pick 1, 2, or 7 compass points to get you to the 8th one, peace of mind. And peace of mind is one of the distinctions that leaders need to think about. It's not just about getting results, because you can get a result and then get unstable again. It's about achieving peace of mind, which is an emotion, a state of being for which you know everything is running right and you're on track. I had to write the book because CEOs, aspiring CEOs, need this book. So,
oh, that's fantastic. And I love your concept of get through chapter 1 and put down the book, because, by the way, the book's not going to do the work for you. It's a roadmap.
It's a little bit of inner work. And then here's my how-to with my best insights.
Yeah. And I'm actually writing my second book now, tentatively titled Stop Telling Just Any Story. And I'm structuring it the same way. It's like, don't just read this book, or else don't even start. Take it and start implementing these ideas as you go along. It is your roadmap, but you've got to put gas in the car. You've got to put your foot on the gas, tap on the brake periodically, get back on the gas. But yeah, that's the best way to use a book. And the other thing I'm going to recommend to all of our listeners and people watching this replay is definitely check out Deb's podcast, The Drop-In CEO. That's how we really met. I was a guest on the podcast earlier this year. She's a fantastic interviewer, and every one of your episodes, I get some value in as a business owner. So appreciate the work you're doing there.
Sincerely appreciate it. And again, it's that resource to give back to others who need some insights and inspiration from others. So you were an amazing guest. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Deb. I appreciate it. Now, if we've been talking a lot about storytelling here. If you would like to get your copies of the 52 storytelling tips, which is just a weekly 5-minute audio that comes right to your email box, the idea behind it is to slowly build the skill of storytelling. You can go to my new virtual business card, which it looks like this when you download it, and it's got everything on there you need if you want access to me. But specifically, you can use the QR code or go to this particular website, infone.co speaking CPR. That'll take you here. Just click on 52 storytelling tips. You can sign up there. And this is our last live stream of the year because we have holidays coming up the next 2 Fridays. But to start us off in January of next year, coming soon, will be Mr. Bill Hasse. Bill is a financial advisor, my old world, and he's going to talk about some key questions financially we should be asking in 2022. So join us for that. Keep an eye on live stream in LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, wherever you're watching. Deb, I want to thank you again for joining me. It's been great to be on the other side of the interview with you. Great wisdom you share. And as I always like to brag about you when I talk, it's just listen to Deb. She's so pleasing to listen to, and she provides great wisdom and brilliance. So I hope you and your family have a terrific holiday season.
And you as well, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.